Hey, what's going on guys? Welcome back to another video. So in this video, we will learn about React main concepts with practical example. I have divided the video into 12 chapters starting from get started in React, lifting up of the state to what is composition in React and how we think in React while building applications. You can also find the timestamp in the description of the video so that you can jump to any chapter directly. So if this sounds interesting, then stick around. Also don't forget to subscribe the channel and press the bell icon so that you don't miss the videos like this one. So let's get started. In the first chapter, we are going to get started with React, and React is a JavaScript library for building user interfaces. And in this, what we have to do is we are first going to do the installation of the software and let's build our development environment. So the first thing we have to do is we have to install the Node.js. So let's go to the browser. So I'm on my browser and here we are going to search for Node.js. And when I hit enter, you will see the first link of the nodejs.org and we are going to click on it. And from here, what you can do is you can download the Node.js version. So either this is the recommended version for most users and this one is the current version. So it's up to you. You can download any one of them. And whenever you click on the download, you are going to get an installation file. And when you click on the installation file, so let me do that. So I'm going to click here and you will see that I have an installation file. So it depends whether you are using a Windows machine or the Mac machine. I am using the Mac machine. And now I'm going to click on the open and it will open a installation wizard. So this is the installation wizard and here you don't have to do anything much. You just have to click next, next, next. And in the end, you just have to click on agree and then install. I have already installed it, so I'm not going to install it again. And the other thing which we need is the Visual Studio Code. So for that, you can go to the Visual Studio Code and this is the official documentation of the Visual Studio Code. And here you can just click on the download. A very similar installation wizard will be open and you have to click next, 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 and then it's done. All right. So I already have the Visual Studio Code and Node.js on my machine. So let's open the Visual Studio Code. All right. So this is my Visual Studio Code. I'm going to zoom out the screen a little bit. Okay. And here what we will do is, so now let's check our version of the Node.js that we have installed. So for me, I'm going to go to the terminal. All right. Let's open this terminal. And here you have to simply write node-v. And this is going to give me the version of the Node.js that is installed on my machine. And when you install a Node.js, you also get a Node package manager and that is npm. So we can also check the version of the npm and the version of the npm I have is 8.1.0. All right, so now we have the npm version, we have the Node.js, we also have the Visual Studio Code. The next thing we will do is we will see how we can build a React application. So to create a React application, we can use a command which is npx create react app and then we have to specify the name of our app. So the name of our app is my first app. All right, and I have misspelled, so I'm going to correct the spelling and I'm going to click on yes. All right, and this is going to create my new React application. So it's going to take some time. It will install all the dependencies. All right, so now you can see that the React application is created and we have some of the steps here. So if we go in the end, then you will see that what we can now do. So in order to start our application on a development server, we just have to use npm start. And if we want to bundle all our files, we can use this npm run build. And to run the test cases, we can use the npm test. And similarly, there is an npm eject, which will remove the tools and the copies of the build dependencies, but we are not more interested on this topic. All right, so now let's open the app. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do first ls, and this ls is going to give me all the directories that are available, and we have to open this. So let's open our React application in the Visual Studio Code. So I'm going to click on the open, and here you will see that my first app, and I'm going to click on the open. So I will just click on yes, I trust the author, and you will see that we have the React application. And let's give a quick walkthrough of the code that we have here. So the first thing is let's go to the package.json where you will find all the dependencies that are already installed when we created the React application. Here you will also find some of the scripts. Then we have a source folder where we have an index.js. So this index.js is the entry point of our application. So here you will see that what we have is constant root and react dom dot create root. So this actually creates the root element, and this root element is created with the help of document dot get element by id, which is root. So that means we have a div which has an id of root. So if we go to our public folder, and here you will see that we have the index.html. In the index.html, it's a simple HTML file, and you will see there is a div in the body section which has a div and id as root. Now, whatever you create in the React, it's all about components and everything, but that we are going to cover in the later part. So now let's start this application, and I'm going to go to the terminal, and in the terminal, I'm going to write npm start. All right, I will hit enter, and this is going to start my application on the local environment. So I'm going to go to, and let's open the browser, and you will see that we have our React application running on our local environment. All right, so we have did the installation, and we have also running the application on the development environment. Let's see you in the next video. All right, so welcome back. And now in this video, what we are going to do is we are first going to create a hello world. So what we will do is we are going to go to the source folder, and let's go to the index.js. And we know that in the index.js, we have created a root element, which is a variable root. All right, and inside this root, we are rendering a component, which is the app. It looks like an HTML tag, but it's a component in React. We are going to come to the component later on, but what I will do is I'm going to remove this. All right, and here what I want to do is let's remove this as well. For now, I don't want anything. I will just have this render method, and in this render method, whatever I'm going to write is actually going to render in my div which has the id of root. So let's start with a simple hello world. So I'm going to have an h1 tag, and let's have a hello world. All right, and now I will save it, and you will see that as soon as I save it, I have a warning that app is defined but never used. Since we have removed the app, what I'm going to do is I'm going to comment this out. All right, now I don't have any warning, and now what we are going to do is this hello world, it's the smallest React example looks like. So we will go to our browser, and we will see that how it looks. All right, I'm going to go to the browser, and here you will see that we have the hello world. If I change anything in the h1, it will get reflect here. So let me change to something else. So I'm going to minimize this so we have both the screens. All right, let me adjust the screens first. All right, so now if we want to change here, so let me change hello world and welcome to React course. All right, I'm going to save it, and you will see that it gets reflected. And if we go to the inspect element, so let me go to the inspect element, and in the inspect element, you will see that we have a parent div which is having an id of root, and whatever we are writing from the React application, it is actually embedded inside the root div, which is this h1. And here also you will see that we have a root element which is done with the help of a create root, and then whatever you are rendering, you will render everything inside that root element. All right, so in the next video we will understand about the JSX. All right, so in this video we are going to understand what is JSX. So JSX is actually a syntax extension to JavaScript, and the funny part is that it looks exactly as a HTML, but it's not actually the HTML. And let me show you how we can do it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this. All right, and let's have the app component back here. Okay, and what I will do is I'm going to do an import again. All right, I will save it, and we see that we have the content which is in the app component is actually rendered here. Now let's go to the app.js. All right, and inside the app.js, I'm going to remove everything. We don't want anything here. All right, I will save it, and we get an error. So what I'm going to do is let's use the same hello world, but in this case we are writing it in a different way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a constant. So let me have a constant inside this function, and I'm going to name the constant as element, and let's give the h1 tag here. I'm going to write hello world. All right, and I'm going to write here welcome to React course. Oops, so I'm going to have the code. All right, and now what I have to do is I have to use this element, and I have to use this element inside the return statement. So here every time you have a component, so this is just kind of a thing that it's a small function, and in this function you have to return a JSX every time. So let's return an empty JSX. So if I want to return something empty, no information, then I'm going to have a empty fragment. All right, I will save it, and now you see that we don't have any error. But now what I have to do is I have to understand this JSX part. What is this syntax which looks like an HTML but it's not an HTML? So I'm going to have a brackets here, and I can use this constant in my this bracket. So I'm going to have the element here. I will save it, and now you will see that we get the hello world and welcome to the React codes. All right, we can also do another thing is I'm going to create a div. So let's have a div, and inside the div I can actually use this element. So I'm going to cut this and let me have the element here. All right, and I'm going to remove this and I will save it, and you will see that we still get the same thing. But you will notice that this is a div, and inside the div you are writing something kind of an expression, and this expression is actually called a JSX. So you can use a expressions inside the HTML which will be looking very similar to the HTML, but they are not the HTML, and they are the extended version of the JavaScript. Now let's take another example. What I'm going to do here is that I will have a constant, and I'm going to have a name, and let's give a name as Dipesh Malvia. All right, and I have to use this Dipesh Malvia inside my div, and in this case is right now we have a div which is return, but if I want to return multiple divs, so I will have one more div here. Let me have a div. I will have to display the name inside the div. All right, and now you will see that we get an error. You need to always return a single HTML tag. So what we can return here is let me return a div, and what I will do is inside this div we can use this too. All right, I will save it, and now you will see that we can see here the page Malvia. All right, I will just remove this. And one thing is that whenever you have to use a multi-line JSX, in that case you need to use the round brackets. So these round brackets are automatically coming to my Visual Studio Code because I am using an extension which is the prettier code, so it will automatically format my code. Now let's take another example. So what I'm going to do here is that I'm going to write a function here. So let me have a function, and I'm going to name the function as format user. All right, and this is going to take a user, and then what it will return is it's going to return the user dot first name. So I will have the first name. All right, I will have a concatenation, and then I'm going to have the last name. So I will have the user dot last name. Okay, and now what I will do is I'm going to remove, let's comment this out, we don't want this, and I'm going to change this to a user. Okay, and I'm going to create an object. This user is an object, and inside that we have a first name. So let me have the first name, and the first name is the page. All right, and then oops, I have to change this to comma, and then I'm going to have the last name. So let me have the last name, and this will be Malvia. All right, and now what we have to do is I have to actually call this format user and pass the user inside it. So I can do that here. So I will have the hello. All right, and then inside this HTML I can use the JSX. So I will write here format user, and then I'm going to pass the user. So this is the user which I am passing. All right, let's save and let's see the output, and here you will see that we have the hello the page Malvia. So this is a JSX. You are embedding an expression inside the JSX. Similarly, you can also use a conditional JSX. So if we want to use a conditional JSX, similarly we can also use a conditional JSX. So what I'm going to do is let's have a function here. So I'm going to have a function, and I'm going to write as get greeting, which is going to take the user. All right, so which is going to take the user, and inside this what is going to happen is I'm going to have that if we have the user, then in that case I want to return a JSX. So let me have a return. All right, and what I want to return is I want to return an h1. All right, inside the h1 I'm going to have the hello, and then I'm going to have the format user. So let me have the format user. So I'm going to have the user here, but if we don't have the user, in that case I want to return as h1 hello, and here I'm going to return as an stranger. So let me have the stranger. All right, and now what I'm going to do here is that I will just remove this, and I'm going to call the greetings. So let me call the greetings. Okay, I will save it, and since I have called the greetings, but you will see that I have to add a braces here. So let me add the curly braces, and now I'm going to save it, and you will see that we see a hello stranger since we are not passing a user here. And as soon as if I pass the user, then you will see there is a conditional rendering, and we are going to return a JSX which is the the hello Depeche Malvia. All right. So in the next video, we are going to understand what this rendering elements are. So I mean, whenever I change something and we see that an element is rendered on the screen. So what this rendering is and how React uses the rendering of elements. All right, guys. So in this video, we will understand what this rendering elements in React is. We know that the element is the smallest building block of React apps, and whatever we see on the browser is actually an element. So what we are going to do here is that let's go to the index.js, and index.js, I'm going to remove this app. We don't want this app component. All right, I will save it. And in order to render a React element, what we have to do is first we have to create a root element, which is the React DOM dot create root, and this is going to create a root, and you can inject that root into your DOM element. So if I go and show you the inspect element, then this is our DOM element, and inside the DOM, if you see, then we only have a div with an ID of root. Now if you want to embed something into the DOM, how you can do is first you have to do a create root, and you can take the reference of the element which is already in the DOM. So this root is already in the DOM. We have taken a reference and we have passed this reference of the root to the React DOM.create root. All right, we have the root, and now whatever we want to render on the screen, we can actually pass in this render function. So let's just take an example again, and I'm going to have a constant with an element, and this element will have an h1 hello world. All right, I will save it, and now I can pass this element inside my root. All right, now you will see that as soon as I pass it, and if we go to the body, so let me zoom a little bit, and inside the body you will see that we have the DOM, and in the DOM we have a div with an ID of root, and inside that we have added a React element. So this h1 hello world is a React element. Now this way you have to render your elements into your DOM. Now the next thing I want to show here is that how you can update the rendered element. So this h1 is already rendered on the screen. Now you want to update this rendered element. So let's take a small example. So what I'm going to do here is that I'm going to create a function tick. All right, and inside this function I'm going to have a constant of an element, and that will be equals to a multi-line of JSX. So let me have a div. All right, inside the div I'm going to have the h1. I'm just going to copy this, I will cut it, and I'm going to add it here. All right, along with the h1, what I want to show is I'm going to have an h2, and I will write it is, I'm going to have the braces here, and inside the braces I will have a date function. So let's have a JavaScript date function, and then I'm going to print the date. So I'm going to have the to local date string. I have simply created an element, and then inside the element I'm printing an hello world, and then I'm also printing the current date and current time. All right, and now what I will do is I will have a root. So here I'm going to render the root. So let's have this. So okay, so I'm going to cut this and I'm going to paste it here. Okay, after I have a reference of the root. All right, and then I'm going to render this. So let me render this. All right, and I'm simply going to call the stick function. So let me have the stick function. So I'm going to use a set interval. All right, and set interval is a JavaScript function which is being called after every interval of time which we will pass. So I will call the tick function in every 1 second. All right, I will save it. All right, so we see the date here, but since after every 1 second the date is not going to change, so what we will do is if we want to update this, let's change this to time string. All right, I will save it, and now you will see that after every 1 second my tick function is being called, and after every 1 second a render is happening. So if I go here and we see that how a rendered element is updated. So here you will see that after every 1 second this h2 tag is being updated, but this h1 tag is still the same. So what actually React do is React only updates the element which is actually changing and not the one which are unchanged. So the h1 is unchanged and React is not updating it, but the h2 tag is being changed after every 1 second, and that's why only that h2 tag is being re-rendered or updated the rendered element. All right, so now in the next video let's understand about the components and the props in React. All right guys, so now in this video we will understand about components and props in React. So you can think of a component as a simple JavaScript function, and it will take the props as an argument, and you can use those props in your component, and then that component is going to return a JSX which is going to display it on the screen. So let's do with an example. So what I'm going to do here is that I will just simply roll back everything. We don't want all this. All right, so we have rolled back, and now here this app, you will see if we go to this app.js, then this app.js is a simple function. So this is a function. I will also remove all this information. We don't want it, so let's remove this as well. All right, and I will only keep this user, and let's have here something called I'm going to have the hello world. All right, so we have a simple hello world, and we have this app as a function, a simple JavaScript function, which is actually returning a JSX, and the JSX is the hello world, which is being displayed on the screen. So this app is called a app component, and in React, each of the component, you can think of that you want to split your UI in different components, and each of the component will have its data in the form of a prop. So let's take an example. So what I'm going to do is I will go here. All right, I will create a folder here of components where I can create my own components, and here I will have a component called welcome.js. All right, and you should make sure that whenever you create a component should always start with a capital letter. And here I want to create a component. So what I will do here is that I'm going to create a function. All right, and name of the function will be welcome. All right, then in the end I will have to export this welcome component. So I will have an export default welcome. All right, and then this component should return some kind of a JSX. So let's return a JSX. So I'm going to return here h1 and welcome from welcome component. All right, or I will just say hello from welcome component. So I'm going to change this to hello. I will minimize this and I will expand this screen, and as soon as I save it, you will not see anything on the screen because we have created a component but we are not using this component. So let's go to the app, and here I will first import the component. So let me import the welcome. All right, now my component is imported, and now if I want to use this component, what I can do here is I will remove this, and I'm going to have an empty fragment. So let me have an empty fragment, and inside this empty fragment I will have the welcome component. All right, so in this way you can use the component, and I will save it. Now you will see that as soon as I save it, you will see here that hello from welcome component. Now what I want is I want to pass the props to this component. I want to pass some information. So I will go here and I'm going to pass the user. The prop name is user, and I'm going to have the user. Let me have the user info. So I will pass the user info, and this user info I will save it. Okay, so now I have passed the props, and now I want to use this prop. So you will go here, and whenever you pass a prop in a component, you will take it as an argument. All right, and let's do a simple console log on it. So I'm going to do a console.log of the props. So I want to see what props I have. All right, I will save it, and let's go to the inspect element. I will go to the console. So I'm going to expand this, and I will go to the console. All right, and in the console, let me expand this. You will see that I have an object, and if I expand this object, I will see that I have the information of the user and the last name. So if I want to use it, what I can do is I can simply have here props.name. All right, and I will save it. And now as soon as I will save it, you will see that I don't see anything. That is because I made a mistake, because it will be props.user.first name. So this will be the first name. All right, and when I save it, you will see that hello the page from welcome component. All right, so in this way you can actually create a component and you can pass the props. Now I want to show you that how you can make this component as a reusable component. So let me remove this, and I'm going to simply have the name here. All right, and I want this component to be repeated 3 times with a different name. So let me minimize this a little bit. Okay, I will close this as well, and I will go to the app, and I'm going to repeat this because I want to use this 3 times. All right, and I will change this the information. First I'm going to pass information as the page. The next one I'm going to pass the information as Amit, and the third one I will pass this let's pass this as Nikesh. All right, and now I have the 3 users. Now you will see that we have 3 different users, but you will see that we don't have the username here. So that means we made a mistake, and the mistake is we are using prop.name. So the name of our prop is name. So I'm going to go, and either I will change it here, or I will simply going to change this as user, and I will save it. And you will see that we have hello the page from welcome component, hello Amit from welcome component, and hello Nikesh from welcome component. So this is how you can use the components and the props. And this component is called a function component because you're writing it as a JavaScript function. But there is another way of writing a component, which is a class-based component. And since we are not going to cover the class-based component because the class-based component is mostly used on the legacy application, and any modern React application is going to use the function component. So now in the next video, we are going to understand about the state and the life cycle of the component. All right, guys. So in this video, we will understand about states and life cycle in React. So to do that, what I'm going to do is in the components, I'm going to create a new file and I'm going to name it as clock.js. All right. And here I'm going to create a function. I'm going to name it as a clock. All right. And this is going to be a new component. I will export this component. So export default clock. So let's have a clock. All right. And in this component, what I'm going to do is first, let's create a function, and this function will be the show date. All right. And when I have a show date, I'm going to return a div. So let me return a div, and this div will have the date, and I'm going to have dot to string. So let's have a .to string. All right. And now what I'm going to do here is that I'm going to call this function with a set interval. So let me have a set interval, and I'm going to set the interval as let's call the function first. So this will be a show date, and this function will be called in every 1 second. All right. And another thing I'm going to do here is that I'm going to do a console log as well, and I'm going to console log the same thing. All right. Let's copy and let's add it here. Okay. And then we have to also return a JSX because every component returns a JSX. So let's return a JSX, and here I'm going to have a div, and I'm going to call the show date. So let me have the show date. I will save it, and you will not see that anything is happening. So what I will do is I'm going to go to my app.js, and let's comment this out. We don't want the welcome anymore, and here I'm going to import my clock. So let me have the import clock component, and I'm going to add the component here. So let's have a clock component. I will save it. And now you will see that okay, let me change this to H1 so that we have a bigger font. So I'm going to change this to H1. All right, I will save it. And now you will see that what is actually happening when we use the clock component, we see the time, and here in the clock component you will see that we have a set interval which is being called in every 1 second. So if I go to my inspect element, and if I go to the console, then in the console you will see that the time is getting updated in every 1 second. But then why this time is not getting updated on my screen? And that's where we have to use the state. So a state will be a local state of a component. So whenever a state is changed, a component will re-render and it will render the updated JSX. So what we can do is we need to import a state. So what I will do is I'm going to have an import React from React. All right. And in order to use the state, there is a hook called use state. So I'm going to have the use state. All right. And now I'm going to create a constant. So how you will use a state in your function component? So you create a constant, then you have to use array like structure, and then you will have a use state. And here you need to give the initial value of your state. So my initial value will be the same. So I'm going to copy this and I'm going to add it here. And here I will have the time, and I will have a set time. Whenever you use a use state, it actually gives you a time variable, and it also gives a function to update that variable. So now what I will do is I'm going to change this, and I will have a time here, and I will save it. And you will see that as soon as I save it, we start seeing a time here, and this is the time. Now what I'm going to do here is that I need to update the time. So whenever this set interval makes a call to the show date in every 1 second, instead of returning this, I'm going to update my state. So if I want to update my state, I'm going to do a set time, and this set time is going to update the state. So let me copy this and let me add it here. All right, I will save it. So in every 1 second, my show date function is being called. And whenever it is called, I change the state variable. So you change the state variable with the help of a set function. So this is a set function. And as soon as I do a set time with a new updated time, so my state gets changed, and whenever the state gets changed, the component is re-rendered, and that's where we will see that this is now updating. Now what is this use state is and what this time and set time is. So whenever you want to create a new state, so let's have a state. I'm going to have a constant, and now I'm going to create a state variable of name. So you will give it as a name, and then whenever you want to update this name, you will update with the help of a set name function. All right, you can also do the same thing is whenever you want to have a flag. All right, and now you want to update this flag value, so you will have a set flag. All right, so this way you will have a set flag, and then you will use the use state, and then you will set the initial value. So my initial value of the flag is true. Let's have a true. So in this way you will use the state. Now what is the life cycles? So whenever you have a component, the component also have the life cycles. So the life cycles will be that you want to execute something whenever your component is mounted, or whenever your component is first time rendered, or you want to do something whenever your component is getting updated, or whenever your component is destroyed. So in those cases you will use a life cycle. So to use a life cycle method in the function component, we make use of a use effect hook. So this way I will use an use effect hook, and now what I'm going to do here is that I'm going to write a use effect, and this use effect will have two arguments. The first argument will be a function or a side effect that you want to run, and the second argument will be a dependency array. So this dependency array will depend on the state variable. So now what I'm going to do here is that let's have a console.log. So I'm going to have a console log, and I'm going to have here component mounted or updated. All right, and I will remove this and I will save it. And now let's go to the inspect element, and I will go to the console, and here I will just remove this function because we don't want, and it's polluting our console. So I will save it. All right, and now I will just refresh my page. So you will see that as soon as I refresh my page, my component is mounted and my state is also getting updated. So since the state is getting updated because this state variable is getting updated. So if I don't want that this get updated every time, what I can do here is that I have a dependency array, and if I give a dependency in this array of a state variable, then in that case the use effect will run only if the state variable changes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a flag here. All right, I will save it, and now I will refresh it. So now you will see that even though my time is getting changed in every 1 second, my use effect is not running because my use effect is now dependent on another state variable, which is a flag. So that means whenever a flag is changed, in that case the use effect will run. So if the flag is changing from true to false, then you will see that the use effect will run. If I change this flag to true again, then you will see that the use effect will run. So this way, this is a life cycle of a component, that whenever a component is mounted or whenever a component is updated, you want to run some side effects. Now there is a scenario that whenever a component is destroyed, you want to run an effect of unmount, that whenever the component is unmounted, you want to do something. So in that case, what we can do is that let's have a constant, and I'm going to have an interval, and I will change this. I will cut this here, and I will have it here. So now I have the interval here, and this interval depends on the time. So I'm going to copy this and I'm going to have the time here. All right, I will save it, and now you will see that every time this show date function is running, my component is getting updated. So that's why we see a lot of component updated console logs. Now let's assume that you have a subscription of this interval. Now you want to clear this subscription whenever your component is unmounted or whenever your component is not visible on your screen. So what we can do here is that, so here we can have a cleanup function which will have a return, and this will be an arrow function. All right, and here you can do your cleanup. So let me have a console.log, and here I'm going to have a cleanup of interval. All right, and here I'm going to have the clear interval, and let's clear this interval. So I'm going to copy this and I'm going to add it. Instead of interval, I have written internal. So let's change this to interval, and I will save it. And now you will see that whenever a component is mounted, the first thing will happen is the cleanup function will run whenever this component mounted or whenever a component is unmounted. So this is how you will do the states and the life cycle in the React components. So in the next video, we will understand about handling of events in React. All right, guys. So in this video, we are going to see about how we can handle the events in React. So what I'm going to do here is that I'm going to remove this flag state. All right, I will cut it. All right, and I'm going to use it in my app component. So in the app component, I'm going to add it here and I will save it. Then you will see that we get an error, and the error is use state is not defined. So let's define the use state. So I'm going to go here. I will have the import. I will have the use state, and that will be coming from the React. All right, everything works as it is. And now what I'm going to do here is that I'm going to create a button. So let's have a button. All right, and in this button, I'm going to give a on click. So let me have a on click here. So I'm going to have a on click, and on the on click I'm going to give a function name, which is a toggle function. So let's have a toggle function, and I'm going to here write as a toggle clock component. I will save it. All right, and now you will see that I have an error because toggle is not defined. So let's have a function called toggle. So I'm going to have a toggle function. All right, and I'm going to have a console log. So simply have a console log, and I'm going to have a toggle clicked, and I will save it. All right, I still get an error because I made a mistake here. So this will be a arrow function. So I'm going to have a constant toggle, and that will be equals to an arrow function. So let's have an arrow function. All right, so now I have the button here, and if I clear the console, then you will see that we have a lot of cleanup, and the component mounting is working from our previous video. And now I'm going to click on this. So when I click on it, you will see that we have a toggle clicked. All right, so in this way you can handle the events. Now what I'm going to do here is that whenever I click on the toggle, I want to change the flag. So I'm going to change the flag. So if I want to set the state of the flag, we will have a set flag. All right, and this set flag we just have to toggle the flag value. So I'm going to do it this way. So if a flag value is true, then it's going to set as false. If it's a false, then it's going to set as true. All right, and now what I'm going to do here is that we have this component called clock. So here I'm going to write a condition, and that condition will be that if I have a flag as true, that in that case I want to show the component, which is the clock component. But if it's a false, then in that case I don't want to show anything. I will show here no clock component. All right, and I'm going to save it, and I will save it. And now you will see that if I click on the toggle function, then you will see that we have no clock component. And if I click on it again, you will see that we have a clock component. But here I want to show you something from our previous video, which was the lifecycle method. So what happens is whenever I click on the toggle clock component, all right, and whenever this is false, we don't see this clock component. In that case, we want to do the cleanup. We still don't want to run our interval. And if I cancel this, and if you see that now I'm going to click on the toggle, and you will see that we have cleaned up the interval, and we have also clicked on the toggle. And now you will see that we don't have any set interval running. So as soon as I click on it again, and you will see the component is rendered again, and you will see that again we have the component mounted or unmounted. And if I click on it, it will get toggle, no clock component, and a cleanup will run. So that's how you will handle the events in your React application. I can also do one more thing. Instead of calling this function, I will return a anonymous arrow function, and in this what I will do is I'm going to have a set flag, and I'm going to toggle the flag value. All right, and this will work as it is. So if I click on it, it will still work as it is. So in this way you can handle the events in React application. So in the next video we will see how we can do the conditional rendering in React. All right guys, so in this video we are going to see about what is conditional rendering in React. So we know that in the React we create multiple components, and we can render the components based on the state of the application. So what I'm going to do here is that let me create a new component, and the name of my component will be login control.js. And what I will do in this component is, let's create the component first. So I will have the login control. All right, and this will be a function. I'm going to export the component. So export default login control. Inside the login controller, I'm going to create two functions. So the first function will be the handle login click. All right, and this will be an arrow function. And then I'm just going to copy this and I'm going to create another function which will be the handle logout. So let me have the logout. All right, and what is going to happen when you have the handle login? I'm going to create a state. So let me have a state of, so we need to import the use state if we want to use the state. So I'm going to have the use state, and this use state will be coming from the React. All right, and now what we are going to do here is that in this I'm going to create a state variable, and the name of the state variable will be is logged in. All right, and then if we want to update this state variable, we will have a function which will be set is logged in. All right, and the initial value of this will be false. All right, so let me have a false here. All right, we have done it, and what we need to do is whenever a user I have misspelled the handle, so let me have the spelling correct. All right, and now what this component is going to return here is let me return a JSX. Here I'm going to create a div, and inside the div I'm going to have a button. So it will display a button based on the condition, which is logged in or is logged out. So if it's a logged in, then it will show a logout button. If it's a logged out, then it will show a login button. So that's where we need to create a condition, and now we need to define what this button is. So what I will do here is that I'm going to have a let button. All right, and in this let button what we will do is we will check that if we have is logged in. All right, if it's true, then we have to have a button, as we are going to show a logout button. So let me have a logout button. So before doing this, let's create two more components, which will be a logout button and a login button. So what we can do is, instead of creating a component in a separate file, I'm going to create it here as well, login button. So I will have a login button, and this login button is going to take some props. All right, and when it has a props, it's going to return a JSX. So what it's going to return here is that it will return a button, and on that button we are going to have a on click event. All right, and here we are going to have the login. All right, and now similarly we will have a logout. So I'm going to copy this, I'm going to add it, and I will have a logout button. So let me have a log out button, and here it will be a log out. All right, and there is a prop we are passing, so we have to pass some prop here. So here what I'm going to pass a prop as a on click, and my on click will have a handler which will be a handle logout. So I'm going to copy this and I will add the logout here. All right, but if it's not the case, then in that case what I have to do is I have to show a login button. So I'm going to copy this again and let me add it here. All right, and here I'm going to change this to handle login, and this will now become login button. All right, I have saved it, and we need to do something that whenever we click on the handle event, so whenever we click on the logout, we have to change the state. So this state will get changed, and I'm going to change the state as true. All right, and now this will become false whenever we click on the handle logout. So let's have this as false. All right, we have done this, and now let's call the component. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to comment this out, we don't want this. I'm going to comment this out, we don't want this. All right, and here I'm going to take an login control. All right, and let's display the login control. So I'm going to have the login control. All right, I will save it, and okay, so we have to add it here. So let me add it here, and I will save it. So now we see that we have an error, and that error is in the login controller, and passing JSX attribute must be assigned to a non-empty expression. So let's go and let's see the line number 27. So if I go down, then on the line number 27 we have to specify here. So what prop we have passed is the prop is props.onClick. So if you see here, the prop name is onClick. So let's pass the onClick here. Similarly, we are going to have a props.onClick here as well. All right, and we see that we have a error, which is a button is not defined. So I have made a mistake, so let me change this to logout. All right, and this will also be a logout. Right, I will save it, and now if I refresh it, then you will see we have a login button. So whenever I click on this login button, it will change to logout, and when I click it again, then it's not changing. That means we have made a mistake, and this mistake you will see here that we have to change this back to false. So let me change this to false. All right, and now if I click on it, then you will see that we have a toggle like login and logout. In this way you can actually do the conditional rendering in React, where you can show the components based on the state of the application. So in our case, the state was is logged in, and based on the is logged in, we are showing different components like the logout button component or the login button component. So in the next video we will see how we can do the list and keys in the React application. Alright guys, so now in this video we will see how we can handle the list and keys in the React application. So for that, what I have done is, if we go to the app.js, we have a simple array of object, and that is the post, and in this you have an object which has an ID, title, and the content. Now what we will do is we want to display all the posts on our screen. So let's go and do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to comment this controller, and what I'm going to do is let's create a new component. So I will create a new file, and I'm going to have the blog.js. All right, then in the blog.js I'm going to have a function name as blog, and it's going to take the props. All right, and then let's export this. So I'm going to export default, and this will be blog. All right, and now we have to use this in our app component. So what I will do is let's import this. So I'm going to import the blog. All right, and then here let's use the blog. So I'm going to use the blog. All right, and when I have to use it, I want to pass the data, and the data is the post. So we are going to pass this post with the help of props. So let's go here, and here what I will do is I'm going to have all the post, and this value of the post is the array of the post. So now let's go in our blog, and here we don't have anything, so that's why we are not able to see here anything. So here what I will do is I'm going to return a JSX. All right, and inside the JSX I will have a div, and then here I'm going to write the content, and now we have to define this content variable. So let's have a constant. I'm going to have a content, and we need to now loop all the post, and we need to display the data. So if we go to the props, then inside the props we are going to have the post. So let's have the posts. We need to map all the posts. So let's use the map, and this map is going to give us an individual post, and I'm going to create an arrow function here. All right, this will be an arrow function, and then inside that I can return the JSX which I want to display. So what I will do is I'm going to have a return here, and inside the return I will do a li list, and then what I can do, I can have here the post dot ID. All right, and then I can have a similar, I can have the post dot title, and I will have the post dot, so let me have the post dot, the third field was let me go and check content. So I'm going to have content here. All right, we have the content, and now what we can do is, since it's a multi-line, so I'm going to have a fragment. So let me have a fragment, and inside the fragment I'm going to take all this. So I will cut it, and then I'm going to add it here. All right, so we have it, and now you will see that what we are able to see here is we have the post.id, but since it's a variable, so we have to add the braces here. So let me have the braces here. I will change this braces here as well, and let's have it here as well. So I will have it here as well, and now I'm going to save it. So now as soon as I save it, you will see that we have the ID, hello world, welcome to the React, and we are able to display all this information. All right, now let me refresh it, then you will see that we get a warning here. So if I zoom it, then you will see that we have a warning, and the warning is that each child in a list should have a unique key as a prop. So here we have a multiple list, but each of the child should have a unique key. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little bit of refactoring here. So I'm going to change this to let's change this to post. So I will have a post here. All right, and inside the post I'm going to pass the individual post. Okay, so let me have a key as well. So I'm going to give a key, and this key should be unique. So what we can do is we can have the post.id, because the ID will be a unique, and then I'm going to pass the post as well. So let me have an individual post, and this individual post will be equals to the post. Now we have this, and now I'm going to cut this. Okay, and we can create a new component of the post. So let's go down, and I'm going to create a function post here, which is going to take the props, and then what we can do is we can return. So we want to return a list. All right, so what I will do, I will change this to a div. We can remove this fragment. We don't want the fragment now here. All right, and instead of that, what we can do is we can have a div here, and then inside the div we can have this. So I'm going to cut this, and I'm going to have it here. I will change this to a div. All right, and then I'm going to just copy this. So I'm going to copy this and this. All right, I will remove all this, we don't want it. And what we can do here is that since we have the props, so we can restructure the props, and on this prop we have the ID, we have the title, and we have the content. So we can directly use the ID here. So let me have the ID, we can have the content here. So let's have the title, and then we can have the content. So I'm going to change this to a content. All right, I will save it. So we see that we don't see anything, and here we made a mistake. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a constant, and on the constant I can remove this. So let me cut this. All right, I will add it here, and this will be equals to the props dot post, because we have a post, and let's have a props here. Now I will save it, and as soon as I save it, we will see that we get an error, and the error is on the line number 10. So this is where we get the error, and this is because we don't want to do this. All right, and I made a spelling mistake, so let me have this. All right, now if I save it, then you will see that we have all the information. Now we don't even see the warning. So if we want to see the warning again, so I will just remove this. I will save it, and you will see that functionality work as it is, but you will see a warning, which is that each child in the list should have a unique key. So that's where you need to give a unique key whenever you use a list, and that's where it's a list and a keys. So this is how you can do the rendering of the list, and you have to add a keys. So in the next video, we are going to see how we can handle forms in React application. Alright guys, so in this video we are going to see how we can handle forms in React.js. So what I'm going to do here is that first let me create a simple form. So I'm going to create a new component, and I'm going to name it as a form.js. Alright, and here what I will do is I'm going to have a function. I will have a form, and then I'm going to export this form. So let me have a form default, export default form, and then what I will do is I'm going to create a form. So let's create a form. So we will have to return a JSX. All right, and inside the JSX I'm going to have a form, and then I'm going to have a label, and the label will be the name. Then I will have the input element. So let me have the input type equals to text, and then I'm going to have a value here. So I will show you how we can set the value, and then I'm going to have an on change handler. So whenever you type something, we have to get the final value. So this is the simple form, and then what I will do is I'm going to have a break tag here. So let me have a break tag, and then I'm going to copy the same thing for my email as well. So let me have the email, then I'm going to have a break tag again, and then I'm going to have a same thing, and this time this will be an email, and I'm going to change this to password. All right, the type will be password. So let me change this to password, and here the type will be email. So I'm going to change this to email, and then in the end we need to have a button, which will be a submit button. So what I will do here is that I'm going to have a button, and I'm going to have a type of submit, and then I'm going to have here as submit. Okay, and then what I will do here is that I'm going to create a local state for my forms. So what I will do, the initial value of my form should be empty. So I will create an initial. So let's create a constant, and I'm going to have the initial value. All right, and the initial value of the name would be empty. Then I'm going to have the email. That email would be empty, and then I'm going to have the password. So let me have the password, and this password will also be an empty. All right, so this is my initial form values which I want, and then what I will do is I'm going to create a state variable. So let me have a state variable of form data, and I'm going to have the set form data, and this will be equals to a use state, and then I'm going to give the initial value as the initial state. So let me have the initial value. I made a mistake. I will have this here, and now what we will do is we want to display the name first. So if we want to display the name, so what I will do is I'm going to use this as form data dot name. All right, so this will be a form data dot name. This will become form data dot email, and this will become form data dot password. So these are the initial values, and now what I will do here is that for the on change is so let's remove the on change first. We will add it later on. So I'm going to remove the on change. Let me remove here as well, and now let's see what actually we can see when we display this form or render this form. So I'm going to go here and let's import the form. So I'm going to import form, and I will comment out the block. We don't want the block. All right, I will close this as well, and now I'm going to display the form here. So let me add the form here, and I will save it. Now, as soon as I save it, you will see that we have the form and we have a submit button. So let's go back here, and here what I will do is I'm going to add a break text so that I can see the break here. And now let me type something. So before that typing something, what I want to show you that initially we don't have anything, we have everything as empty. Now if I make this change as the page and if I save it, then now if I refresh my page, then you will see that I have the page value here. But let's give this an empty, we don't want it. And now if I refresh it again, then we will not see anything here. Now what I want is that as soon as I type something here, all right, I'm not able to see anything here. So that's where what we have to do is we have to add a on change, because this is called a controlled components. So for a controlled components, you manage the input data with the help of the state. Now what I want is that as soon as I type something, I need to feed the value in my state. So what I will do is I'm going to have my on change. So let me add the on change, and on this on change I will have an function. All right, this will have an event, and then I have to set my form data. So to set the form data, first I need to have all the initial value in my form data. So I'm going to have the form data here. All right, and then I want to update only the name. So I will have the name, and the new value of the name will be event.target.value. All right, I'm going to add the brackets here. So it's an object, so I need to add a brackets here. So now I have that, and I have to do a very similar thing for my email and the password. So I'm going to copy this and I'm going to add it here. I will just change this to email, and I will have it here, and I will change this to password. All right, I will save it, and now we have everything. And now what I want is whenever I fill my form and then I submit my form, I need to have the values. So in order to print the values, what I will do is I'm going to simply have a paragraph tag here, and then I'm going to have here a json.stringify, and I'm going to print the form data. All right, I have the form data here, and now currently it's empty. So what I want is whenever I click on the submit, I need to have the values. So what I will do here is let's go and add an on submit here. So I will have an on submit, and on the on submit I will have a function called handle submit. All right, I need to define the handle submit now. So let's go here, and I'm going to have a constant handle submit. This will be an arrow function, and it's going to have an event. All right, but now if you notice here, when I click on the submit, my page gets refreshed, and I don't want to do that. So I'm going to use event.prevent default. All right, now this will prevent the refresh of my page. Now you will see we don't have any refresh. And now let's have a alert. So I'm going to have an alert, and inside the alert what I will do is maybe I can write this same thing. So I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to have this, and here I'm going to have to beautify it. So I'm going to have an undefined, and I'm going to give a space s2. All right, I will save it, and now let's give a try. So I'm going to type the page here. Let's have a email address, which is malvia@gmail.com, and I'm going to give a random password. And when I click on the submit, I need to see an alert with the values. So you will see that when I click on the submit, I see the value of my form. The name is the page, email address, and the password. So in this way, you can actually handle the forms, actually the controlled component of the forms in the React application. So in the next video, we are going to see how we can do the lifting of the state up in React application. All right, guys. So in this video, we will understand about how we do the lifting of the state up. And before doing that, before creating an example for that, we first have to understand how we think in the React. So let me show you a slide where we will understand that how we think in React and build the components. So in this slide, we can see that we have a page. Let me do a slideshow. We have a search bar, and we can type anything on this input box, and based on the input, whatever we are typing, we are filtering the results of the list. So in this case, if we want to build this functionality, first we have to think that how we can break this functionality into different components. So you will see that now we have three different boxes with three different colors. The gray color is a outer box which will have both the search bar and the filtered list, and then the search bar is a separate component and the filtered list is a separate component. So in order to build this functionality in React, we have to create three different components, and then we can create this search functionality very easily. So let's try to build the search functionality, and here we will also see that how we are going to do the lifting up of the state. So let's go back to the code. So the first thing we will do is we will create a search component. So let me have a search dot search.js. All right, and in this search.js, I'm going to have a function search, which is going to take some props. All right, and then I'm going to have an export default of this search. All right, I misspelled the search, so let me correct this. This will become search, and I'm going to export this search. All right, I will just close this. We don't want it, and I will also close this. All right, and then what I want is I also want a component which will display the list. So I'm going to create one more component, and the name of that component will be the list.js. All right, I'm going to simply copy this and I will add it here. All right, I will change this to list and I will export the list. All right, and now what I want is that in my app.js, so let's go to the app.js, and this app.js will be the outer component which will contain the search bar and the results. So here what I will do is I'm going to comment this out, and here I can use the search bar and the list. So what I will do is I'm going to have the search component. All right, and below the search component I will have the list component. All right, I am wrapping it in a fragment. So now let's import the search component. So I'm going to import the search component, and this will be coming from the components slash search. All right, and I'm also going to import the list. So let me have the list as well. So this will be the list, and this will change to list, and I will save it. So this will be a list, and now I'm going to click OK, and I will refresh it. So as soon as I refresh it, you will see that I get some error in the app component. Okay, so we made a mistake here, and this will be dot slash, and this will be dot slash. All right, so now we have it, and we should be able to see our components, but we don't see anything here because we haven't written anything here, or we don't return the JSX. So let's return a JSX from here. So what I will do here is I'm going to return a JSX. All right, and this will have a div, and inside the div I'm going to have the input of type text and then the value. All right, and then I will have the on change. So let me have the on change. And now what we have to do is we have to create a state first. So in order to handle this, let's create a state. I'm going to have a constant. I'm going to have a search term, and I will have the set search term. All right, and these two will be equals to the use state. So we have to import the use state. All right, so let's import the use state. I will go here, I will do an import. I will have the use state, and this use state will be coming from the React. And now what we have to do is this search term will become the value. So let me add it here. Okay, and since we are getting an error, so let's see what the error is. So I see that I misspelled the input, so let me have the input. So that's the one thing. And then if we go down, we will also add the on change. So this on change will be an event, and this will have an set search term, and to the set search term we will have the event dot target dot value. All right, so now we have it, and we will also do we will also have a search here. So let me have a search. So now we have the search bar, and the next thing is we need to have a list. So let's display the list. So I will have the props here, and I'm going to pass the list from here. So this is the list. I will just duplicate some more records. So let me have the records here. All right, so I have created some more records, and now we have to pass this list here. So let me have the list, and I'm going to pass the list as posts. So let me copy this, let me add it here. All right, let's go to the search list, and inside the search list we are going to display the information. So what I will do is I'm going to have a return here, and what this is going to return, this will return a, so for that let's have a UL first. All right, and inside the UL I will have the prop, or what I can do is I can just do a destructure of the list. So let me have a destructure, and I'm going to have the list here. All right, this will become list dot map, and this is going to have an individual item. All right, and here I'm going to have a li, and I have to give a key. So we have to pass a key. The key will be item dot id, and then what we will do is we are simply going to have the item dot title, and I will save it. All right, we don't see the list because we have to return the list from this function. All right, so now we have the list. We also have the search here, but now if I type anything in the search bar, then what I have to do is based on this search term, I have to filter my list. And now in order to do that, then if you will see here, then I have a search in this local state, all right, in this local component, but I want to pass this state into my app.js, and then in this app.js I have to do the filtering on this list. So that's why I have to do a state lifting up. I have to lift up my state from the search and put it in my parent component. The parent component is the app.js. So what I will do here is, let's go in the app.js, and in the app.js I will create a state. So let's have a state here. So I'm going to cut this state from here, and let's lift up the state in the parent component. All right, so now we have the state here, and now we have to pass this information in my search component. So let's pass that. So I will go here, and what I will do, I'm going to have a search term, and this will be a search term. All right, and then I will also have to manage the state. So I will get the term from here. So this will become, I can destructure and I can have a search term here. So let me have a search term. All right, but since we also have to update the search term, so for that what I will do is, I will just remove this, and removing this, instead of that I will have a handle search. All right, and I have to pass the handle search from my prop. So I will have one more prop here, which will be a handle search. All right, and now here what I will do is, I'm going to pass one more prop, which will be handle search. This will be a handle search, but since we don't have any function with the handle search, so let's create that function. So I'm going to come here, I will have a constant handle search. This will be a arrow function. It's going to have an event, and then what I will do is, I'm going to have a set search term, and then here we can have the event dot target dot value. All right, I will save it, and now you will see that we still get an error in the search, because if we go here, I will have to save this. All right, now we see that nothing is changed on the UI, but we have lift up our state from a search to the parent component, which is the app.js. And now based on that, what we can do is we can actually filter out the results. So to filter out the results, what we have to do is we have to create a constant. So let's have a constant, and I'm going to have the filter list. All right, and this list will be equals to, I will filter out all the posts here. So filter out the post based on, I'm going to use a filter method, and in this filter method what I will get is, I'm going to get the item. All right, and then I have to have the item dot name, or we have the title. So what I will do is, I want to have the item dot title dot to lowercase. So we are going to make a search on a lowercase, and this should includes. So let me have the includes, and then in the includes I can have my term. So let me have a search term. All right, and this is going to give me the filter results, and what I can do is I can pass this filtered result into my list. So that will going to give me all the filtered results. But since I see that there is an error, so let me refresh it and let's check the error. So I have an error that access post before initialization, and that is because we have added this here, but we have initialized the post here. So let's go down and let's add it here. All right, I will save it, and we don't see anything here because we have passed the filtered list, but let's go and see. We have to return this, so let's return here. So I'm going to do a return, and I will save it. And now as soon as I save it, you will see that we have the list. And now let's try. So I'm going to search something with R. So you will see that we have a results which contains R in it. So this is R, this is R, R, and R. So this is a free search, and we can now build a search functionality. So this way you can do the how you think in the React, how you build the components and break down the functionality, and how you lift up the state. So in the next video, we are going to see about the composition and inheritance in React. All right, guys. So now in this video, we will understand what is composition versus inheritance in React. So React has a very powerful composition model, and it is recommended to use a composition instead of inheritance to reuse the code between components. So let's understand this with the help of an example. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to create a new component, and I will name the component as welcome dialog. So let me have a component with a welcome dialog dot JS. All right, and this is something kind of a dialog box that we are going to create. So let me remove this, and I'm going to have a function which will have a welcome dialog. All right, and then let's export this function. So I'm going to export default, and this will come to be dialog. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another component which will be a fancy border. So let's have a function. I'm going to have a fancy border, and this fancy border will have a props. All right, and then it's going to return something, and this is going to return a div. All right, and sometimes we don't know that what props we are going to get. So there is another thing which we can do is we can simply use props dot children. So this children will give us whatever we pass inside the fancy box. So it's going to take it as a children. So let me show you how it happens. So if we go here, and this is going to return so let's return a JSX here. So I'm going to return a JSX as fancy border. All right, and now whatever I pass inside in between this fancy border component will be taken as a children prop. So now if I pass something, so before I pass something, let's do one thing. Let's go and import the welcome dialog. So I'm going to have a welcome dialog. All right, I'm going to copy this. Let's add it, and now I'm going to change this to welcome dialog, and this will become welcome dialog. I will remove this, and now what I will do is we don't want this, so let's comment this out, and I will use the welcome dialog here. All right, I will save it. Now you will see that I see a props.children here. So what I have to do is I have to use the brackets, and now if I do the brackets, I don't see anything, but I need to give some additional information here. So what I will do here is I'm going to have an h1 tag, and inside the h1 tag let's say that this is a dialog title, and the title will be let's say welcome. All right, and then we have a paragraph in the title. So let's have a paragraph, and the paragraph is thank you for visiting our space graph. So I have this, and now if I save it, then you will see that automatically whatever the children's are present in the fancy border component will be taken as a props.children. So this way you can do the containment when sometimes you don't know what the props will be passed. Now let's take another example how this actually helps in reusability. So what I will do is I'm going to create a new component. So let's have a function, and I'm going to create a dialog. So this dialog will be a generic dialog, and I'm going to pass the props in the dialog, and inside the dialogs I'm going to return a JSX. So I'm going to cut this, and let's add a JSX here. All right, now I have the JSX here, and now what I can do is I can actually have the props. So whenever I have the props, I can use this as props dot title, and for this I'm going to make use of props dot content. All right, so now we can pass the title and the content as a prop. So now let's go to the welcome dialog, and in the welcome dialog what I will do is I'm going to return a JSX, and this JSX will have the dialog component. So let's have a dialog component, and in this dialog component what I can actually do is I can have the title as welcome. All right, and then I can have the content, and let's have the content that this is React course, and I'm going to change this to welcome to React course. All right, I will save it, and now you see that we have a welcome to React course. But now what if I want to reuse this same? So let me zoom out a little bit. So what I can do is I can use the same thing again. I will copy this. All right, I will also close this, and then I'm going to add it here again. So I have to pass an empty fragment because now I have a multi-line JSX. So let's cut this and let's add it here. All right, and this will become now welcome to JS course, and this is a JS course, and I will save it. And now you see that we have a special dialog box which will take the title and the content, and it can be reused. So this is called composition in React, where you can use the props.children for containment, and then you can create some specialized dialog box where you can reuse them. So with the help of this composition, you can solve all the problems, and that's where there is no inheritance required in React. So that's all I have in this video. I hope you liked the video. A thumbs up is appreciated. You can also connect with me via Facebook or Instagram. You can follow me on Twitter for latest updates. And before you go, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon so that you don't miss the videos like this one. Thank you. Thanks for watching.